generally speaking, when we succeed, it's not only we who are succeeding. Generally speaking, our successes are part of an overall initiative. And we have to remember that when we celebrate, it's not only about us, it's about our team, and our family and our kids are part of that team.
Marjie Hadad is an international public relations expert who specializes in how to apply public relations practices to parenting, life, and careers. Her first book, The Power of PR Parenting: How to Raise Confident, Resilient, and Successful Children, is launching on April 4th. Marjie is married and is the mother of 3 children. She lives in Israel as well as the United States. And I'm really excited to talk to Marjie today because we're going to be diving into how public relations will lead you to a better life, specifically when it comes to building your career and being the best parent that you can be. Marjie, it's great to have you on the broadcast.
Amen, Brandon. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful introduction. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We were introduced by Roger Williams, who has also been on the broadcast, and you lived out something that was on your bucket list. And that's the name of Roger's podcast for everyone. You can go check it out, Living Out Your Bucket List. So to start this off, because I think it's very fascinating, what was that experience that led you to Roger's podcast? What was your bucket list item?
Well, I like adventure. So my bucket list item that I spoke to Roger about was taking a camel ride in the Sahara Desert at sunrise.
Wow. And have you ever ridden a camel before that?
Yes, I had ridden a camel multiple times before that. But, and this is a big but, I thought that doing so at sunrise in the Sahara Desert would be the ultimate camel ride experience. And actually, I would say that was pretty close. It was really quite magical, as I described to Roger, watching the sunrise and the light cascade all over the desert, watching the plant life illuminate, and being in a caravan of multiple camels and doing it with my 2 daughters, which was a phenomenal experience to make it a mother-daughter thing and to give
Yes.
them that experience as well. So it was really tremendous. I'm not a big fan of the camel itself, nasty animals, but I sorry to those people out there who love the camel, just not my
Hopefully no
choice.
camels are listening.
Yes, hopefully no camels are listening. And no disrespect intended, but the camel ride was magical. The camel wasn't so much for me because the camel that I rode, Brandon, did not like me.
Mm.
The camel on the way there was fine. On the way back, we switched camels, and I got my daughter's camel, and the camel made it very, very clear that he or she was not pleased with the traveler
Mm.
on their back.
Yeah, maybe it sensed what you really feel about it.
Who knows? But they made a lot of noise, and I thought the camel was actually going to bite me.
Oh, really?
And the guide came over and had a staring contest with this camel. And then they fell quiet, but that camel ride couldn't have been any shorter. The good news, though, is that I learned how to speak camel after all the noise that this camel made. And the translation was, "Get this lady off of me. I want that other young girl over there from before. I don't get paid enough to take somebody like this. Forget it. I quit unless I get a raise." And then the man came over, had a stare down, and that was that.
Yeah. Well, that camel doesn't have the easiest job, so I'm sure maybe it was having one of those days. But for you guys, you should definitely go check out that episode of Roger's podcast. But whenever Roger introduces me to someone and says you should have this person on the show, it's for a really great reason. And your upcoming book, which launches in April, is The Power of PR Parenting. And we're definitely going to dive into PR in the sense of parenting. But what inspired this book for you? What inspired your first book at this chapter of your life?
Well, that's an excellent question. I was sitting on the couch with my daughter, and she was telling me about a friend of hers who had recently gotten married. And she was concerned that she wouldn't be able to juggle between parenthood and her education and career pursuits. And my daughter looked at her friend and said, "What are you talking about? My mother's been doing this for 25 years. Of course you can." So my daughter said to me, "Mom, you made mistakes, but overall, I think you got it right. I think that you should help the next generation of parents, specifically working moms and interested dads who want to be counted, and help them to benefit from your hindsight, from your 2020 retrospective perspective, so that they can benefit from your expertise and your experience." And I thought, okay, well, first of all, can I have that in writing that I actually did something right? That was a nice surprise. And then I thought about it and I thought, well, what exactly did I do?
Mhm.
And I understood when I looked back that I had used my professional skills to parent and that it had worked out. And because it had worked out, I wanted to share with the next generation, kind of pay it forward, if you will, what I did right, what I messed up, because we also learn from our mistakes, the strategies and practices that I actually used. So I'll walk you through in the book the exercises of exactly what I did. And then this way, at the end of each chapter, you will have learned from stories and you'll actually have a practical approach to apply to your own situation.
That's powerful. Yeah, especially for me personally, especially for people listening who are already parents or who plan to be, and really for anyone who just wants to build their career and maybe they're even juggling their business or their quote unquote side hustle while they're building their career. And it sounds like what you're about to share is going to help all those different types of people. So give us an idea, where were you in your professional career when you had your first child?
I was working at a big agency, and actually, this was right before the big agency. I had just given birth and I was at a boutique that was being purchased from a larger agency. And when I came back from maternity leave, it was the big agency. And I was working 3/4 of a day and doing the working mom thing.
Did you know how to do that? Did you have to ask yourself some questions like, how am I going to build my professional career while being a new mom? Like, what were the emotions during that time? And what were some of the first things you learned when it came to successfully parenting while still focusing on your career?
So there's something very important here to note. I didn't realize I was doing it while I was doing it.
Hmm.
This is really important. I understood this only in retrospect. So I did this naturally. And I want to make a very important point, which is that generally speaking, we're told to leave our professional lives and our jobs at the job and not to bring them home. I would argue the complete opposite. I say use what makes you special, use your skill sets, use your superpowers, not only at work, but also at home, because it's going to help make your kids happier and help them to be their best selves because you're giving them the best part of you as well that way. I don't think that these things should be separated. I didn't separate it when I came home. I use communication skills all day long at the office, whether it's working with colleagues, whether it's working with clients, copywriting skills, telephone skills, needing to be resilient when you get no's, knowing how to celebrate with grace and dignity when you have one of those big wins. There's all things that we do, many things that we do in public relations that could be applied and actually were applied at home. You've everything from copywriting to performance to presentation skills. And what I ended up doing, interestingly enough, was taking traditional rites of passage along the way and using what I did at the office to do at home that way. Does that make sense?
It sounds like what you said was less about work-life balance and more about work-life integration, right? Not being
Yes.
afraid of your children seeing that you are working, having these professional conversations. At the same time, it builds in them the idea of, in order to support the life that you want to build, it's going to take drive, it's going to take discipline, it's going to take communication skills. You mentioned specifically using those superpowers both at work and with your family. Was that something you were conscious of? Like, okay, I'm really good at this, I'm going to use it in this part of my life too. Like, what would you say your superpower was at the time?
I like to write, as do all public relations people. It's not exclusive to me. Public relations people also plan. We media train and presentation train, and we plan events. And these are skill sets that are not only unique to public relations, but are common denominators with many professions out there. In the case of our home, as an example, I love telling this story. This is the story of how we started to hone writing skills really, really early on. May I give you an example, Brandon?
Please.
In first grade, that's when children start to lose their baby teeth.
Okay.
Remember when you were in first grade and you started to
Not
lose your
really,
baby
but a little
teeth?
bit.
Oh, okay. What do we usually do when we lose our baby teeth? Your first child starts to lose their teeth. Your wife is going to, along with your child, wrap up that tooth and put it under their pillow and probably introduce the concept of the tooth
Yep.
fairy.
Yep.
And then you, Brandon, or your wife will produce some version of money or something else to swap out that tooth with, correct?
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. That was
Now,
me too when I was young. Same thing.
okay. So this is what we're getting at. I wanted to teach copywriting skills at home. In first grade, that's also the time when the kids are learning sentence construction. We learned our ABCs in kindergarten. We learned
Hmm.
sentence construction in first grade. So at our house, what we did was we combined the two, the tradition and the copywriting. And I asked my children to write a letter, a request letter to the Tooth Fairy.
Wow.
So we had a tradition where they learned how to advocate for themselves in written form. I would help them, or my husband would help them with content. They would physically write the letter down. And then after they were finished with their first draft, because we all know in public relations that there's no such thing as the perfect first draft.
Mm.
Everything can be edited, right?
Yeah.
The question is how do you go about editing it? So never with a red pen, always with a bright, soft color. And I'd say to my child, okay, this is a fabulous first draft, understanding the concept of the first draft and also complimenting them to build their self esteem. Now, is it okay if I show you another way to perhaps approach this? And then they say, okay, what's another way to approach it? Because I didn't say that they did anything bad. I just said it was a fabulous first draft. But
Yeah.
now we want to improve it a little bit. So I might change the spelling. I might suggest another word choice, something like that. And then after we had finished editing together in a nice color, then I'd say, okay, how would you like to write it over again and make it pretty for the tooth fairy? So
Hmm.
then they'd write it over again. So a second chance at practicing handwriting and getting the concept of subject, verb, direct, object into their head. And if I was really lucky, then I have them write it in both languages because maybe the tooth fairy speaks English or reads English, and maybe they, they're better in a different language because they travel all over the world. So we might want to, we don't know what we're catching them at that evening.
Yeah.
Depends how much bandwidth they had, and that determined how much I would push in doing it in multiple languages.
That's
And then they would
creative.
take the letter, thank you, and put it in the envelope with the tooth, and that's what they would slip under their pillow. So that was the tooth fairy exercise and an example of how to use something you would do every single day in your public relations practice and applying it at home.
Very creative. Did the tooth fairy write a letter back to them? Or just
Once in
gave
a
them the reward?
while, yes, once in a while. But
Okay.
generally speaking, no, because they knew our handwriting.
Yeah, that's
And we
true.
were very careful not to get caught.
Hmm.
Every once in a while, we came very close to getting snagged. But generally speaking,
That's
everything
powerful
worked
because
out very well.
that's teaching them, it's educating them, it's expressing your own creativity at the same time and theirs especially. And it makes me think I like to write because that's a lot of what we do is copywriting and the sort. But let's say even maybe your skill is music, right? And they grew up in a very musical household. And you could say the tooth fairy is a very musical entity. And you can express that in many different ways. You can play them a song in the recorder. You could write them some lyrics. You could do anything like that, and they'll respond to that. Or maybe your superpower is you are a presenter and maybe you are a public speaker and that's what you do full time and your kids see that and you're like, well, the tooth fairy likes this too. And then you train and educate your children at a very young age how to, like you said, put those sentences together and speak them out into existence. So I can see so many different ways that can go. And by the way, I'm definitely taking that because I doubt that I ever would have came up with that idea without your help.
With absolute pleasure. This is one of a gazillion things that we talk about in the book. And I am so happy that this has been helpful and useful for you.
Is there another exercise that comes to the top of your mind that gives a great example of combining both your skills, public relations, along with parenting?
Well, there's lots of examples, Brandon. There's 10 chapters worth of them.
What's another of your favorites that you can give us right now so we don't have to wait till April to see them? Just one.
Let's see. I would say let's go with your example of music.
Okay.
Every time I media train or presentation train, I always jam out with my clients. Because before you present or you go on camera, you're generally a little bit nervous because of the adrenaline. So you have your key messages down, you know exactly what you want to do, you know exactly what you want to say, you've already been prepped. But it would be really nice just to be able to chill and clear your mind. And I find that the best way to do that is to pick your favorite song, whether you're going to rock out, whether you want to chill, whatever works for you, and listen to your music for maybe 3 to 5 minutes, maybe even 10 if you'd like, and dance, rock it out, or sway, whatever works for you. And then this way, all you're thinking about before you go on is the music. You clear your brain, and then when it's showtime, you're ready to go. And I did this with my kids before they would present, before they would have to do anything that was making them a little bit nervous. And it always seemed to work out very, very nicely. Before a performance, before a school play, before they had to do a school presentation, even as simple as jamming in the car on the way over to school. And then that would put a smile on their face and they were ready to go.
I love that. You're helping them become more comfortable with themselves while deepening the bond that you have with them at the same time. I have a couple questions specifically about identifying these skills
Sure.
that you can bring out and use. So the first question is, do you focus more on what your superpower and strengths are? Or do you focus more or equally on what their strengths and superpowers are? Because they're going to be different than you.
Both. I would try to contribute what I could, but I would also identify what they showed an affinity for.
Mm.
So, as an example, my son has multiple talents, my daughters have multiple talents, They all showed some sort of an affinity towards something. Most of the time, I have no talent in these areas. So I would find someone who did so that they could explore their talents. And this is when the parents become executive producers.
Mm.
And you're in charge of making sure they get to their appointment on time. You're in charge of watching to make sure everything remains enjoyable, because if it's not fun, then it's not worthwhile after a while.
Hmm.
And I would cut it if I saw that it had reached its plateau. As the executive producer, you keep time. As the executive producer, you make sure that your child is growing and enjoying. So even if it wasn't my specialty or my superpower and they showed an affinity, I did my best to give them an opportunity to take it as far as they could.
That's amazing. I love that idea of you being the executive producer for their lives, helping them smoothly create the screenplay of their own life, not you saying, I love to write, so that means you're going to love to write. But at the same time, still helping them become better at that specific thing, even if it's not their superpower, because you understand the value that being a better writer will give them later in their life. You understand the value of helping them learn how to move their body and dance, which is something that I was taught or shown how to do early in my life. Like, I'm musical, but dancing is one of those things where I frequently hear myself say, I'm not a dancer. I don't dance. But the reality is I probably don't dance because I say those things and I have that belief, but I can do other things musically. So why hold that belief? And what you're doing with the power of public relations and your skills and all that is building belief above all in your children, that you can express many different talents and skills and gifts, and you can express them in many different ways at the same time. So it's very powerful what you're sharing here.
I think what was important along the way was that the kids learned how to succeed and the kids learned how to fail and
Mm.
then try again. Resilience was a big thing. Better to try, and if it doesn't work out, find another way. Just re-strategize and try again. Very, very simple. You know, not everything's a direct line. Sometimes we have to zigzag to get from point A to point B. And that was a constant theme at our house. Sometimes they would get it right the first time. Sometimes it took a couple tries. And guess what? Both were fine.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned earlier the idea of when they succeed or even when you succeed, the idea of celebrating gracefully. I
Mhm.
found that fascinating when you said that. I've never heard someone mention it like that before. What does it mean to celebrate gracefully?
Well, generally speaking, when we succeed, it's not only we who are succeeding. I'll give you an example. Whenever I would have a success at work, I would try to keep in mind that my kids watched the success and were part of it, that my colleagues at the office were part of this. It's always teamwork. Generally speaking, our successes are part of an overall initiative. And we have to remember that when we celebrate, it's not only about us, it's about our team and our family, and our kids are part of that team. So if you're going to celebrate, we need to celebrate together and appreciate everybody who was part of that success.
Yeah, that's really the
That's
idea
what
of
I
being a
mean by
great leader.
gracefully.
Yes, both at work, at home, not just saying I did it, but we did it, right? Bringing up all the people around you.
I mean, look, when there's a success, like a really big success, I I have a thing called the yes dance. I'll demonstrate. I
Please.
usually do something like this, you know. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. And then the kids are with me and they start doing it too. And so we have the yes dance, which is kind of a fun way for everybody to celebrate and enjoy and appreciate the moment.
I love that. That's cool. It's great to have your own thing that you can go to and almost anchor yourself in that state of success. But I know that it's not always success, right? You mentioned that there's going to be shortcomings. You mentioned there's going to be mistakes. And in your book, The Power of PR Parenting, You mentioned that you're going to talk about the strategies for success, but also the mistakes that you've made and what you've learned from them. Now, for the sake of this conversation, is there one mistake that you made with any of the three children that comes to mind that you learned something profound from that you think that will take value from as well?
Yes. Your children grow very quickly, and we need to give them credit for their advancement even early on. And I didn't give enough credit to my children on occasion for their developing skills. And that led to, and this was a huge mistake. We have a very heavy iron gate that leads to our house, which after a birthday party I had closed. And you need some effort to open up this gate. And at the time, my 2-year-old demonstrated without us knowing her ability to open up the gate. And after this birthday party, she had disappeared.
Wow.
And I was doing the dishes at the time. And I thought, wait, this house is too quiet after a party. What's going on? And so it's like after like 120 seconds, it didn't take too long for me to say something's not right here. So I asked my husband, where's the baby? And he says, I thought she was with you. And as it turns out, as I had mentioned, she had taken a walk. The good news is a neighbor found her and she was fine. The bad news is that I had not identified her ability to be able to open up the very heavy gate door. She was 2 years old. Who thought, right?
Yeah.
So when I got back with her, she didn't wander off too far. That's the good news. But the time between identifying her being not in the house and the time that we found her felt like an eternity. So parents out there, try to skip this one. And if your child is even 1.5 or 2, whatever you're doing, whether you're baby proofing the house, whether there's electrical sockets, whether there's something with the stove, whether there's a door that you don't want them to get through, really walk through with your children why the gate is closed, why the stove is childproof, why the electrical outlet is covered. If you key message with your child directly, then there's a half a chance that they'll understand the importance of honoring your wishes. So my daughter didn't do that again, but we also locked the gate for a little while just to emphasize it. That was the mistake, not giving her credit for being able to open the door.
It sounds like she took the adventurer spirit from you.
Yes, she's still very adventurous, actually.
I love that. Thanks for that piece of advice because that's powerful. And I read recently in a parenting book by Kendall Smith, who wrote Rookie Father. It's a great book. He talked about exactly what you're talking about right now, but your story adds to that in a profound way. He talks about educating exactly why the gate's closed, educating why they can't be in the kitchen while you're cooking something on the hot stove, educating how the glass mantle in front of the fireplace is a dangerous thing to play in front of. So even if you have to say it 40 to 50 times, it might sound like a lot, but eventually they'll hear you, they'll understand, and hopefully they won't play in the kitchen, by the mantle, by the giant iron gate out front. So that's a powerful principle.
In public relations, when we media train, we prep our clients. There's the who, what, where, when, why, and how. Who are you being interviewed by? What's their perspective? How long will the interview be? Where is it going to be? When you're supposed to be there? When you're supposed to be back? What's the dress code? What's the disposition? What are the questions? And you go through all these questions in advance and you practice with your client to make sure that they are prepped. The more you know, the better you can prepare them. Same thing with the kids. If they're going out at night, so teenagers, right? So little kids, teenagers, it's the same thing. Who, what, where, when, why, how. Prep your child in advance on what to expect and on the possibilities of what the unexpected could be. If this happens, if that happens, scenarios, just like we do it at the office, this is what we should do with our kids. And then this way, if something happens, expected or unexpected, you have a game plan in place. So you all know what to do collectively so that the end is a positive one.
I'm learning a lot from this conversation, and I'm excited for your book to come out, as well as the program / workshop that's coming out with it. So let's talk about your book. Let's talk about your program. Again, guys, Marjie's new book is The Power of PR Parenting: How to Raise Confident, Resilient, and Successful Children. It's launching on April 4th, but I know you also have a workshop that is launching on May 24th. So talk to me about, we talked a lot about the book, what people can expect. Who is the workshop for, and what can those expect who go through that workshop with you?
The program is going to be a 5-week program, once a week for 2 hours. And it's meant for the parents out there who want a deep dive. You read the book, you have the exercises, you have a free workbook that comes with the book so that you can actually write out whatever you need to write out. And I guide you through that in the workbook. But then if you want to get into it a little bit more and say, hey, Marjie, I'd like to walk through my specific situation and workshop it so that not only do I have an action plan at the end of my workbook, but I have extra guidance. I have other parents to run ideas by so that we can compare and contrast. And I have your 30 years of experience to help me along the way. That's what the program is about. I want to pay it forward and do my very best to help the current generation of working mom and dad of toddlers to teens to have an easier time parenting. And if I can do that through a personal approach, that's what the program is about. And ultimately, this is not necessarily about the book or the program. This is about creating a PR parenting movement. So all the parents that go through the program, all the parents that read the book, and then they can take whatever wisdom speaks to them, the pros, the cons, whatever works for them, whatever speaks to them, pay it forward to their children. And hopefully their children will pay it forward to their children and becomes generational. So this thing starts with me, but hopefully it will be going on long after I'm gone. I would really love to see PR parenting become a thing. And ultimately, it's how to apply communication skills to have an easier life and to have success with career, with parenting, and with life.
Well, I know I'll personally be checking out the workshop myself, and I urge everyone listening, for those who are new parents, who've been parents for a long time, who have teenagers of their own, is this for those who have children of all ages, or is it for specific types of parents?
I would say it's for parents with kids of toddlers to teenagers. I would say up through university. The earliest stories in the book and that we can cover are pretty much when they first go into kindergarten. One of the stories I tell is about a PR practice I used to deal with separation anxiety when I dropped my son off at the nursery school. I'll read the book. I'll spare you the story right now. But I've been using these techniques literally from the early days all the way up until now. And I have a son in university. I've got a daughter in medical school, and I have a senior in high school right now. And I'm still PR parenting. Even today, I was PR parenting.
Yeah.
So we all have tenure as parents. It's a never ending job. We're doing it until we take our last breath, and we have to give it our all because that is the contract we signed when we decided to have kids.
That's right. We're always getting better. We're always learning. We're always continuing to become better parents. And at the same time, it's helping us in our careers too. Happy family definitely leads to happy time at the office, right? And growth there at the same time. So for everyone listening, again, Marjie's book is The Power of PR Parenting: How to Raise Confident, Resilient, and Successful Children. It launches on April 4th. Her program launches in May, but you can start following Marjie today. I'm going to have her social profiles in the description, as well as her new website, which is PR for Life.
PRFOR period life. And Brandon,
Got
I would just like to say that this is genuine. This whole program, this whole movement, I promised my daughter I would help. It's a motto I've had since my childhood. It's a family thing. If you can help, you should help. And I'm hoping that this book and this movement and this program help people. And I'm very, very much looking forward to meeting everybody, and let's do it together.
I love that. I can tell it's genuine. I love the stories you've shared today. Those are helpful alone. So I can only imagine what's in the book, what's going to be in the program. And I'm really glad that Roger introduced us, Marjie. It's been a pleasure chatting with you today. Thanks so much.
It's so much fun, Brandon. Thank you for inviting me.
New parents, existing parents, Marjie's upcoming book is going to be for you. You can find the link in the description. Her book is launching in April, the program in May. One more time, that website is pr4.life. pr4.life. Link is in the description. I hope you found value from this conversation. And if you did, all that we ask is you shared this show with just one other person who could use it as well. If you took one insight, one strategy, one new learning, something new that you're going to try with your family, share this show with just one other person. You're the reason why the show has grown the way that it has, without ads, without sponsors, because you are the best part of the Be Better team. Thanks so much for tuning into this conversation with myself and Marjie. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.